Now I want you to take a deep breath and let it out. And set aside any papers you have in your hands. And just get in touch with your body. Just be aware of your body and how your body is feeling in this moment. Get in touch with your breath and observe your breath. Notice your breath. Be aware that in this now moment you're safe. You're taken care of. You got all the breath you need. You can feel your heart beating and the blood is coursing through your body. You can sense the tingling in your body and be aware that you have all the energy that you need as a loving, living, cared for child of God. Take another deep breath. And just let it out. Let go into the presence. The presence. The presence of this moment. And remember what Charles Fillmore said. You don't have to even believe what you're saying in your prayer, but as you align with this higher thought, remember that a lower thought always gives way to the higher thought when you truly hold it. And so we're going to do a passage meditation of the affirmations contained within the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Together.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Silently say that. And whisper it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And silently. And now say it silently. And move into the feeling of peace that those words give you. The courage to change the things I can. Together.
The courage to change the things I can.
And silently. And whisper it. The courage to change the things I can. Silently. Say it silently. And now move into the feeling of it. Feeling of courage. And the wisdom to know the difference. Together.
And the wisdom to know the difference.
Silently. And whisper it. And the wisdom to know the difference. Silently. Say it silently. And now move into the feeling of that wisdom. And now the whole prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Together. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Silently. And whisper it together. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can,
And say it silently. And now move into the feeling of this truth. Just let yourself feel it, their whole being. In this now moment, I am safe. I am comforted. And I provide the feeling of safety and comfort for all those who need it around me. And now I ask you to imagine your spiritual thermometer. If your consciousness was on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you be right now? Just imagine where it is. Is it below a 5 in your separate ego? Is it above a 5? Moving up to 10 in your soul or higher self. Take the number that you got and just be with it. Don't judge it. And make the decision where you would like to be. Focus your will. And choose the number you would like to be at. And imagine the mercury and the thermometer moving up to that number. And along with it, you grow lighter, brighter, more aligned, more attuned, more at peace. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And so it is. John Lennon said, everything is going to be okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end. Everything's always in process. We're always growing, we're always learning, and the true gift that we get out of life is not an outcome, any outcome. It's who we are. It's what you came in with. It's what you're going to leave with. That consciousness, that being that you are, that I am self, is the who that you are, and that is what is unfolding and evolving in your soul right here and right now. I am the I am that I am. Together? I am the I am that I am. What is that I am? That is, well, that's a name of God. A name of God is just a receptacle into which the energy and life and reality of God can pour. And that's the who that you are, the identity you are, the beingness that you are. And through every situation, whatever the outcome seems to be, that's what you were really coming home to. That's what you come home to. It came to me in meditation not long ago that outcomes are cheap, but consciousness is valuable. What I want is cheap, but who I am is valuable. Think about that. That, you know, so many people are focused, fixated on the outcome. They talk about something called the law of attraction. How many people heard of the law of attraction? Well, Charles Fillmore wrote about it over 100 years ago, and he cautioned people, don't think the law of attraction is getting what you want. It is getting who you are. You never get what you want. You get who you are. That's what shows up. And so if you want to have better outcomes, don't get to work on changing this out here as much as changing what's inside, because what you're going to experience, the experience of your life, not all the ins and outs of what you want or don't want, that experience of your inner self, your inner soul, that's all you have, that's all you ever had, that's all you will have. And that is where you find your grace. That's where you find your serenity. To which end, I'm going to ask you to pull out your serenity prayer, which is in your bulletins. And we did a meditation on this. People for decades have used this in recovery because they don't have time for a bunch of theology. They don't have a time for a bunch of religious teachings. What they need is something that helps them to find out and claim the truth of their being. You know, Charles Fillmore talked about this when he said, set time every day, a definite time, and pray whether you believe in it or not. Take a spiritual statement and repeat it over and over. It does not matter that at first you do not believe it to be true. If you will persistently affirm this truth, even if you do not believe it at first, you will find that your prayers have power. This is one you can take. And regardless, this isn't about politics. This is about living your life from a position of power and freedom. Myrtle Fillmore once said, we don't tell you that you don't have problems. We're saying don't let them have power over you. And the only way that you let problems have power over you is by saying that the outcome, the outer appearance, is the important thing. The important thing is my consciousness and how I show up in it. How am I showing up in this now moment? That's the important thing. So this serenity prayer is a powerful prayer. And you can use it. You can use it to bring the waters of spirit into your life, and all those dormant seeds within you can blossom forth. You are a field of possibility. And the only way that your potential is going to burst forth, like those fields of wildflowers in California that would burst forth when there was a heavy spring rain, is for you to bring to bear those resources within yourself with an act of focused will. Now, we like talking about love, but love is something a lot stronger and more real than a sentiment or a feeling or something that passively happens to us. It's something that we engage with and we choose. We choose to love. We choose to love in the face of appearances, of what we like, of what we don't like. And that love is engaged with when we realize who we are inside. We'll get more into this in a second, but I'm reminded of a young woman who was a Youth of Unity member when I was running the Youth of Unity back almost 40 years ago. I ran 3 Youth of Unity conferences. And she was at all 3. And then many years later, maybe 15 years later, I was on a panel at Unity Village at the ministerial school, and she was on the panel too, and it was people talking to the ministerial school students and answering questions about youth education and unity and how valuable it was to have a spiritual basis and how it made a difference in their lives. And when it was her turn, she said, I've never told this story to anyone, even my closest friends. But it's all over me to tell the story now, and you're the first people to hear it. She said, I went to the Youth of Unity for 4 years to the conferences. And then about 2 years later in college, a lot of things happened, and I was suicidal. And I had planned it all out. I was ready to take the action. And just before I was ready to take the action, I remembered what it was like being at the Youth of Unity conferences. That the sense of who I was. When they called to Christ to me, at that moment, everything seemed so dark. I couldn't see it. But I thought to myself, what if that's what's real? And what I'm feeling right now isn't what's real. And I thought about it and I said, the outside chance that this isn't what's real, but that is what's real, I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it some time. But not only did she give it some time, she thought to herself how far she'd gotten from her basic spiritual practices. She practiced her prayer for protection and her prayer and her meditation every day for many years in her teenage years, and she'd stopped doing it. So she started to take a time every day and work with it, a focused act of will to engage the I am that I am, the being that she was. Well, at the time that she was on this panel, she was an executive at Unity headquarters. She was somebody who wrote articles and edited and did many, many things for Unity she moved consciousness and she moved lives. You move consciousness and you move lives. I move consciousness and I move lives. Together, I move consciousness and I move lives. If and to the extent that you engage with that part of yourself and you're not passive, you're not just sitting back and saying, oh, a woman said to me this morning, this last week taught me that I'm complacent, that I've been lazy, that it's time for me to engage with the being that I am. Because if I can get rocked by outer appearances, then what's the value of my spiritual practices? I need to get real with myself. I need to make it a real part of myself. And this isn't about likes or dislikes or outcomes. This is about who you are. Every circumstance, in life is designed to wake you up. And she said, this was a wake-up call for me. Lynn said last week, sometimes change comes like the winter, that you're like a squirrel and you gather up your walnuts and you're preparing for it and you know it's coming. Sometimes change, though, comes like a whirlwind. And if you are doing the spiritual things that you need to do every day, those that you know what they are, and it isn't a big deal. It's just engaging yourself. Then when times come that don't suit you, that you know who that you are. The I am that I am. The I am that I am. What is that? That's the name of God. Here's a little nerd talk, but the very earliest name in the Bible for God was Yahweh or Jehovah, which is the verb to be. It's not a noun. It's a verb. It's an action verb. The action of being. I am now in the presence of pure being. It is that I am actively being. So how do you experience it? Well, if I say to you, you got to learn how to ride a bicycle, what are you going to do? Get a book on it? You got to get up and then fall off. And then get up and fall off. And that's what you do with your spiritual practices. You try them out and they become a part of you until you're flying. It becomes a part of you and you can't get enough of it. So, you are now in the presence of pure being. That Yahweh, that Jehovah, when Moses heard a voice, coming out of a burning bush. What's the burning bush? It's just a light that was coming forth from over there somewhere. And they didn't have any way of light happening at night except for fire, so he figured it was burning, right? So he's looking at it and he's saying, well, who are you? If they're going to ask me who you are, who are you? I am the verb to be. I am the activity of being itself. And the only way to experience the action of being is to act with your beingness, to get in touch with that beingness at the level that you understand it. And not try to make it too difficult or put a burden on yourself, but just engage in an active way. My dad, I talk about him a lot. He was quite a mystic in his own way. He owned a hardware store, and he'd get migraines, twice a week. And my grandma would have to take over the hardware store when he'd have to lie down. And, they just prayed that nobody wanted plumbing advice, So he would, do that. And that happened. And every morning before he went to work, he would do his Silent Unity affirmations. He got these affirmations from Silent Unity in answer to his letters for prayer. And they were wonderful statements, much like the Serenity Prayer. And he would work with them for 10, 15 minutes every morning. And it was a good practice. He did that. But after he retired, he decided that wasn't enough for him. He was going to engage at a deeper level. So he didn't just stop with saying it and kind of sitting there for a moment. He moved a little deeper. Didn't spend a lot more time, maybe 15 more minutes, but his migraines disappeared. Now you could say it's because he wasn't working in the hardware store anymore, maybe, I don't know. But it was because he was engaged with a deeper level of his being. Are you willing to engage with a deeper level of your being? Are you willing to do that? And then the law of attraction is always, I get what I want. No, the law of attraction is you get who you are, and if you're working on your being, then that natural need of your soul will roll out. You'll get the outcomes that you need. You'll get everything that you need. Jesus said, seek first this kingdom, and all the things will be added unto you. But you've got to resonate with, vibrate with, align with a higher thought. A higher thought always takes over for a lower thought if you persist in it, but you've got to have the will. You've got to have the will. You've got to have the will. I was just reading, what did Napoleon say? You can't lead a cavalry charge if you think you look funny sitting up on a horse. You got to engage your will. You've got to get strong with yourself. And that focused will, standing up to yourself when you say, don't. Move with it. Move with it. But what you're doing when you're doing this is aligning with a higher thought. And what's the higher thought? The higher thought is something that is established already in the consciousness of humanity. Established already in your soul, and you can align with it. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake is a botanist from England, and he has some incredible theories about this. How many people know who Dr. Rupert Sheldrake is? You know, the theory of what he called morphic resonance, but don't worry about that term too much. But he's talked about how everything that we see, everything we experience as individuals, as humanity, is because of a shared resonance with a consciousness. And he talked about it in terms of our spiritual practices. He said, You can say that spiritual resonance is the basis of all religious teaching. The Christ and the Buddha revealed a level of human consciousness that's potentially accessible to everyone. So the Buddhists speak of the Buddha nature, just as the Christians speak of the Christ consciousness in everyone. And this may act as a spiritual tuning system. A spiritual tuning system. You align with something that's greater and higher and deeper and better, and you move up with it. You move up with it, and it becomes a part of you. And like Charles Fillmore said, at first you don't even believe in it, and you don't have to. Charles Fillmore practiced his presence after he saw his wife get over 2 terminal illnesses. It made him think. So he started practicing, and he said it took him 6 months before he felt anything. Now he said nobody else is going to take that long, because he said, I'm so hard-headed, and he was. He was a very skeptical, agnostic person. But if you just take and engage yourself with these practices and make them a part of yourself, what did Jesus say? That what you bind in the physical is bound in the spiritual, and what you align in the physical, it becomes aligned in the spiritual. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. That consciousness of group and shared alignment. In this room, there are people who are aligning with each other. This is a safe space. It's a safe space not to exclude anyone or not to include somebody in some strange way, but we're all safe. And that brings me to the safety pin. You see the safety pin here. This is the safety pin that I'm wearing. And we've got 2 chalices here. And one's for each side of the room. So what I'm going to ask you to do is take a pin if you want, but only take 1, because I only have enough for 1. And you can get more on your own, you know. These aren't magical pins here, but they've been blessed. And just pass them around. And just take one and then just keep going down the rows, okay? You know how to do that, right? And when you get to the back of the room, the ushers will take them and it'll all be good. Now, what is this about? After the Brexit vote in England, there was a lot of violence against immigrants. And so somebody said, well, I don't want to, what can I do? And they said, what's the safest thing there is? A safety pin. I'll just wear a safety pin so that anybody who's feeling unsafe knows that there's somebody who stands with them in solidarity. That's all. That's all that means. And I read something about it that's so beautiful. It says, I am safe. I am here. Speak. I'll listen. I'll hold you. I'll stand up for you. I'll sit down for you. I'll shut up for you. I'll do what I can to let you know I love you. And this sign is how you will know me. We build an energy field together as a consciousness of humanity that doesn't rely or depend on outcomes. As my meditation said, outcomes are cheap. Who you are is valuable. What you want is cheap, but your true spiritual nature, that's what's valuable. You say, what good is that? That's the only thing you have. That's the only thing you ever have. It's the only thing you ever will have. It's the only thing that is of value on this earth. And it's not to run away from the situation. It's just the way it is. Remember I shared a couple weeks ago about my mentor, Dr. Mary Allen, and she talked about the shattered good story or the letting go of an old good story. So if you have a good story about the way things are going to be in outcomes, that's just part of life. Sometimes every outcome is always a little different than you had in mind. But you should still have a good story. You should still work towards it. But there always comes a time when you got to let go of the good story you were holding. And whatever that good story you were holding is limiting you. It's like your shoe is limiting the size of your foot. You got to let go of it and breathe. And the only way you can let go of it, she said, were 2 things. And remember that I'm reviewing here. The first is tell the truth about it. And especially tell the emotional truth about yourself. What you're feeling. Jesus talked about this when he said, blessed are the ones that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Mourn meaning, what that was in Greek was a word for deep-seated emotional turmoil. Being honest about your feelings without making them anybody else's problem. If you're blaming somebody else, you're disempowering yourself. So, she said, Mary Allen said, the first thing is to tell the truth about what's going on. Get out of the now. The second is, don't try to create a new good story right away. Instead, move into the now moment and build the energy, the essence, the vibration, move the consciousness out of which a new good story will emerge naturally. And I just want to say again, like I say all the time, because there's so many, it seems every other week we've got some interesting thing happening somewhere in the world, and I'm always addressing it. These things aren't new. If you read history, this has been going on since the beginning of time. Our country has had turns this way, turns that way. The world has had turns this way, turns that way. Right now is actually, potentially, the safest time for all of us to live. Statistically, they've crunched the numbers. There's fewer wars, fewer people dying, less poverty, less hunger than there's ever been. You say, it doesn't feel like that to me. That's your amygdala talking. Tell it to shut up. You have a higher mind. You have a higher mind. It doesn't mean, though, that you shouldn't take action. But don't take action as a knee-jerk reaction to whatever new good story you'd like to see take place. Instead, tell the truth about what's going on in yourself, and then move into your spiritual practices, and then allow a new good story to emerge that you can participate in. Now, I shared a second ago about the serenity prayer, and there's a serenity flow chart. I want you to turn it over and take a look at this. It's so simple. And that's why I loved it. When I saw it this week, I went, okay, there's a problem. It's your perception there's a problem. The first question you ask is, can I change it? And there's 3 answers. The first is yes. You ask for courage and you change it. The second answer is no. And you ask for serenity and you accept it until you don't. Then you ask for serenity again and accept it until you don't. And you ask for serenity again. Because spiritual practice, meditation, is the bring back muscle of your soul. Always bring yourself back. Expect it. Expect that you will fall asleep. You will lose your serenity. And your job as a spiritual being is to bring yourself back to that choice of serenity, your will. Because that's just part of life. Everybody's mind wanders. Everybody does that. That's normal. Even Jesus was there in the Garden of Gethsemane saying, oh God, take this cup from me. I don't want to go through it. Can you imagine? He said that. He also said, with God all things are possible. But what things are possible? God things. Not Greg things. Or even in that moment, what he was asking for. You say, but I thought prayer was answered. Prayer was answered. He said, nevertheless, thy will be done, not mine. And he was saying that there's a higher reality, a higher truth, a higher something. And so, ask for serenity, accept it, ask for serenity, accept it, and keep moving with it. The third possibility is, there's a problem, can I change it? Maybe. Ask for wisdom, the wisdom to know the difference. Ask for wisdom. And then, go back and ask again, can I change it? And then yes or no. And you can ask for serenity or courage. So this can help you. This empowers you. This gives you a sense that you are a valuable child of God. You are a spiritual being having a human experience, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said, not the other way around. And your spiritual self is the only thing that ultimately matters. You say, but I want to make a difference in the world. You will. You will as you engage with your spiritual nature. And this is a good way of finding out about it. You don't just have to use the serenity prayer as your focus for meditation. You can use I am that I am, which is a name of God. You see, what's the name of God? Well, look, God is this absolute, infinitely powerful something that is really so infinite that we can hardly relate, can we? It's almost like you're driving down Central, you see those high-tension power lines. Could you plug in your toaster to it? If you plug in your toaster with the high-tension power lines, not only will your toaster be toast, you'll be toast. So what do? Instead? You get a step-down transformer so you can use it. And the concepts that you have, like I am that I am, your understanding of God, God as you understand God to be, or your own understanding of divinity. Some people think it's personal, some people relate with God as divine mind. Whatever it is, that is a step-down transformer for you. And it also, I suppose, has limitations, but it's useful. It's useful. And so you can plug into a divine idea, your divine idea of God. Some of us use traditional prayers because they've been prayed for what? Thousands of years. The Lord's Prayer, you can use that as an affirmation. One of my classmates in ministerial school talked about his grandfather. He was a Russian Orthodox. He was in Russia. during the period of time during the revolution, and he was on the wrong side. So they took him and all of his friends, and they made him dig a ditch, and they were going to stand in front of it. It was a firing squad. Now, he had prayed the Lord's Prayer every day as his focus of devotion all of his life. And as they stood there waiting, he said the Lord's Prayer out loud, and just it came all over him. He just picked his coat, put it over him, and started walking down the road. His friend said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going home. I'm going to go to America."
Oh my gosh.
And so he went walking, and nobody stopped him. There was an energy. There was an energy there. I got this story secondhand. I wasn't there. But the principle is true. Build an energy, build a thought form, build a vibration. Like Rupert Sheldrake says, then a transmission, a spiritual transmission comes with your alignment of it. And so today, we're doing this with the Serenity Prayer. It's a powerful thing. You are empowered to the extent that you choose to align with your being, not the circumstances, and then let your being roll out those circumstances which are aligned with that being, because you get who you are. So let's just go into a time of meditation very quickly, and we're just going to take that Serenity Prayer briefly one more time. And I'm just going to say it. You don't have to say it aloud. Just let me do it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Silently. Feel your way into these words. Feel the peace, the serenity. Feel the strength, the will, the courage. Feel the clarity and the wisdom. Know that this is the seed thought of God in you. Thank you, God. So we want you to know that it's time for our offering, and our offering statement is, I give from my focused act of will, and I receive abundantly. Together? I give from my focused act of will, and I receive abundantly. Silently. And again, aloud together. I give from my focused act of will, and I receive abundantly, and so it is. Amen.